Hello guys, I'm back from another video and today we talk about what if Deku was the only boy with a quirk. So in the last video we talked about how, it's been a while since he's been, doing some stuff, so he would basically start training and learn how to use his legs once again. So, after, a while of basically, hanging out with, Ida, well, three teachers would basically arrive to basically visit him. Not really teachers because one of them is the principal, but still. So, these teachers were All Might, Aizawa, and finally the principal, aka Principal Nezu. They would explain that they're gonna be, introducing him to the rest of the, students of Class 1A and Class 1B. After being told of this, they would ask why. Well, the reason why is because they don't have the capacity to basically, hide the secret anymore. And apparently, some people basically came into his room without his knowledge, and apparently they sort of saw the secret, aka, Izuku living there. So, after being told of this, Izuku would basically be told by both Principal Nezu and also, Aizawa that he should get ready and also make his appearance look okay-ish to the rest of the girls. So, he was, told by his, master, aka, Ida, that he should probably, change his clothes. Specifically, maybe, get a brand new, set of clothes for this, interaction. So, after getting into his brand new clothing, he would basically go outside as the rest of Class 1A and Class 1B are there. After introducing himself, they were pretty jealous, except for Bako and Izumi for obvious reasons. Actually, not really. I mean, Bako was still pretty jealous about, Ida being, Izuku's master. So, yeah. And for, Izumi, she doesn't really care. Except for the whole part of basically, bringing him back to, Inko to basically reconcile with her. So, after the whole introductions, he would basically start to, leave as both Izumi and also Bako want to talk to him. After they said sorry to him for all of these years of torture that he has to deal with back when he was still, still weak, or quote-unquote weak, Izuku would forgive them, but it was not his fault, or their fault in this case. It's more like, Mash Kirolite was basically the catalyst for him to basically be pushed farther and turned them into, his berserker-like state. So, after explaining all of that, both Izumi and Bako would be happy about that. Except for Bako for obvious reasons, because remember, she's still in love with Izuku, so because, wait for a second. Because Ida is, Izuku's new master and has to, obey her, well, she's sort of jealous because she wants to do that to Izuku. Except for the whole bullying part. Instead, she wants to, reconcile with him and maybe even... Actually, I'm not even going to say it. So, after basically doing that, it was basically the next day as not Izumi, I meant, Ida would basically start to leave to go back to class. After a while, Izuku would wake up as he hears a knock at his door. After realizing that it's not really time for, Ida and the rest of it, Class 1A to basically leave, because it's currently lunchtime, for them at least, he would basically open the door and see a girl. Specifically, this girl was, well, you probably know her, Ibarra. So, Ibarra will basically pin him down and basically tells him that she should be her master instead. I mean, well, she sort of has this, holier-than-thou mentality, and so she deserves anything. So, after basically telling him that, Izuku would explain that he needs to have a master that has a significant, a significantly larger, mana pool, or magic circuit. But when Izuku saw through her, well, she doesn't have, enough mana or magic circuits to basically take care of him. So, unfortunately, Izuku would explain that, but she would try to, force him to do it, no matter what. But when he was about to get, stabbed by her, well, Izuku would look up as he would see Vlad Queen. So Vlad Queen would basically disarm her, as she would basically tell him to basically get some rest. After all, after that little, um, you know, thing, he should probably get some sleep. So, after falling to sleep, he would basically wake up as he would see a worried, wait for a second, a worried Ida. But Izuku would tell her that he was okay, and it's more like he should basically apologize to her. If it wasn't for him, he could have, keep her safe or something of that sort. But she didn't care. So, after basically, reconciling, they would basically, start to get, they would start to, feel a little bit sleepy, and so, after eating dinner, they would basically start getting ready to go to bed, as they would go to sleep together in their arms. So, yeah, so, that is basically what happened last episode, and so, let's talk about what happens next. So, Izuku would basically wake up as he would wake up, Ida, because it's almost time for her to go to class. So, after waking her up, she would basically start, get ready for class, as she would go away to go to, class with the rest of her classmates. As usual, Izuku is all alone, as he would basically, start to do his whole routine. In this case, mostly just like exercising, which, well, the exercise in question was mostly, weight training and also, increasing his muscle mass once again. So, after a while of basically, exercising, he would basically, stretch a little bit as he would hear the sound of the door opening again. Or more specifically, the Class 1A dorm, as he would say this. I just hope it's not that Ibarra girl, because he would remember that little incident as quite a experience to say the least. So, Izuku would basically bring up his, one of his gauntlets as he would wield his, wield Gaiboga in one hand as he would wield, this, aka, Erendite in, his mouth, similar to Zoro. So, he would basically get ready as when the door was open, he would see Aizawa, as Izuku would say this. Oh, Aizawa, what are you doing here? As she would say this. Well, I want you to join the... Well, not really join, but I want you to at least watch with me. As you would say this. Watch? What do you mean by watch? As she would say this. I want you to watch with me, or should I say, I want you to, watch with us, aka the teachers, in the sports festival very soon. As Izuku would say this. Wait, sports festival? As he would start to remember, as when he was, thinking about it, he would remember back in the day when he was still, still pretty innocent, that apparently there was a sports festival. Apparently, a sports festival was basically a thing that basically, that's basically what you think, basically just like in the anime. As Yusuke would say this, so you're basically telling me that I can, watch the whole, sports festival thing, but still, I mean, where should I watch it then? I mean, every single girl would probably just gonna kill me or something like that, or maybe even, she would say this, oh, don't worry, we're gonna be giving you a special room for you to watch, with the rest of the other, well, with the rest of the teachers. As Izuku would say this, oh, thank you. As she would say this, anyway, I also want you to train my students. As Izuku would say this, excuse me, what? As she would say this, I want you to fight, or at least, train my students. After all, the sports festival is going to be pretty hard for them. So, I want you to maybe join the, little battles that you're going to be, participating in. As Izuku would say this, so you're telling me that I'm going to be training some of the students of, Class 1A? As she would say this, not including Class 1A, but also including, Class 1B as well. As Izuku would say this, well, great. Izuku would just basically, scratch the back of his neck. As she would say this, yeah, unfortunately, but still, it would be great for you to basically learn how to fight again. As Izuku would say this. I guess so. So, after, basically talking to her, she would basically leave as we go back to Izuku, basically just training once again. So, after a few hours have gone by, Izuku would basically see everybody basically flooding in back into the, the dorm of Class 1A. So, everybody's basically gone back to their rooms, including, Ida, as Ida would say this. So, what happened to you, Izuku? As Izuku would say this. Oh, just been training and also being told that I'm gonna be training with you guys. As she would say this. What? She would basically, shout a little bit, as Izuku would say this. Yeah, apparently Aizawa told me that I'm gonna be training with you guys. Apparently for, the sports festival. As she would say this. You know about the sports festival? As Izuku would say this. Well, I was told about it by, Aizawa, so... As she would say this. Oh, I see. So, Izuku, are you... As Izuku would say this. I guess you can say that I'm kind of excited, but trust me, I'm not joining it. After all, I'm a boy, and as she would say this. Oh, I see, but why are you training us? As he would say this. Well, apparently they want you to basically get ready, because apparently the sports festival is pretty hard. And also, Class 1A is going to be participating in this little training bit or whatever. And not only that, he would basically sigh, as he would say this. I'm also going to be watching the sports festival with, the rest of the teachers. Apparently it's supposed to be a little treat after that little incident with me and Nabara. As she would say this. Oh, yeah, that, as she would say this. I meant he, yeah, So, after a bit of talking, they would basically, feel a little bit sleepy, so they decide to make a little dinner, which was just oatmeal and probably like some, assorted fruits. They would basically, fall into bed as they would fall asleep. So, when Izuku wakes up, he would basically ask, wait for a second. Ida, that it's time for her to go to school. As she would say, don't worry about it. Besides, we don't have class for the next, month. We're gonna be training, so... As Izuku would say this, so we're gonna be training together, including with Class 1A and Class 1B. As she would say this, oh yeah. So what time? As Izuku would say this, I don't know, apparently, Aizawa told me that she's gonna be coming there very soon, or something of that sort. As she would say this. Okay then. So, after a few hours of sleeping, they would basically wake up as they would eat breakfast, as they would basically be brought to a little training area in, the backyard, which was created for, Izuku only, and for, the rest of the students that are planning to, train for the sports festival. So, when Class 1A and Class 1B members were basically there now, well, Vlad Queen would basically explain the whole thing. And they're gonna be training with Izuku, so one of them is going to be fighting him, and this person was going to be, well, one of the students, specifically a Class 1B member, would basically step up to the plate, as she would say this. Hello there, you may call me Nato Monoma. So, I'm gonna be fighting you then? Can't wait to fight you then. As she would basically start, touch somebody from the back, or more specifically from where she was, standing, and this person was Ibara. As when she, touched her, she would start gaining the same, vine-like hairs as her, as she would say this. So you have some sort of copy quirk? As she would say this. Yeah, I'm able to copy any quirk that I desire. I just need to touch them anyway, so... As Izuku would say this. Very well then. As Izuku would basically wield up, Gaibolga, as he puts it in his mouth, as he would grab, well, wait for a second. As he would bring out 2 submachine guns. As both of them would basically, get ready to fight, as Aizawa would basically say, 3, 2, 1, go! As both of them would basically start charging in. Izuku would basically use Gaibolga as some sort of like, I guess you could say like a defensive weapon, yeah. As Izuku would start firing off his like submachine guns. When she got shot, she thought she was about to die, but they were just rubber bullets. As she would say this, that could have been a fatal kill. if it was real bullets at least. So, maybe try a little bit harder and think about your strategy more. As he would basically, reload his, submachine guns, as she would start charging in once again to get ready to attack him because he was, basically distracted from, her. So, she would basically get ready to, slam her fist into Izuku's face as Izuku would move away at fast speeds. Izuku would start creating clones as these clones would basically carry different weapons, like for example, knives, 2 guns, 2 swords, and, Gaibolga. So, they would start charging in as, Ibaro is a bit overwhelmed a little bit. As Izuku would say this, "Now, let's have some fun." As he would basically, bring up his sword as he would say this, "Now take this, Erendite Overload!" As he would basically, create this slash, a pure red slash across the arena as it causes a little explosion. As, wait for a second. As it causes Motomo to basically, fly away from the, arena as she would be knocked down. As one of them would basically say this, specifically, Aizawa, as Aizawa would say this, "The winner, Izuku Midoriya." As Izuku would say this, "Do not try and underestimate a person just because of their gender. Got it?" As Izuku would start looking at her, as, Monoma would say this, "Do tell, ow." As Izuku would say this, "Don't worry, I'll heal you." Izuku would basically go closer to her, as she seems a bit, flustered a little bit. So, Izuku would basically grab a rock, specifically a rock that seems to have some sort of, wait for a second, a rock that seems to have some sort of marking on it, as it would start to glow a faint, bluish color. After it starts glowing, well, she would start to feel a little bit healed, as her scratches and also her bruises would basically be gone. As she would say this, "What was that?" As Izuku would say this, "Healing runes. Kukulane teached it to me. It's just mostly created from mana and also a bit of, my, techniques. Or should I say my powers." As Izuku would basically go back to the arena, as he would say this, "Alright, who's next?" As, Monoma would basically start, blushing a little bit, as she would say, "He was super close." She would basically start saying that to herself, as she would basically, start to leave, as she would go back to her, little spot. So, after a few sparring sessions later, well, Izuku defeated most of the girls. And for Bakugo, she was also quite tired from the little battle, as she would say this, "Izuku has certainly gotten stronger." As, Izumi would say this, "Yeah, brother's certainly gotten a lot stronger." As Izuku would basically start sweating a little bit, start sweating a lot, as he would basically take off the shirt, as his body would start glistening in the, sunset. As, the girls there, see the ones from Class 1A and Class 1B, except for, Izumi, they would start nosebleeding as hell. Like, all of them, and I mean all of them. As Izuku would just look at them as he would say this, "Are all of you guys okay?" As, they would say this, except for, wait for a second, except for Izumi, they would say, "Yeah, we're okay." Starts nosebleeding, as, one of them would basically come up to him. Specifically, Ida, as she would say this, "That's pretty good, Izuku." As Izuku would say this, "Ida?" As she would say this, "What?" As she would basically, feel her face, as she would feel something on her nose. When she looked, she would see that it's blood. As she would say this, yeah, it was nothing." As Izuku would say this, "Let me just grab," as she would basically see that Izuku grabs a little, wait for a second, grabs a little napkin from his, pocket. As he would basically uses his hand to grab her face, as Izuku would basically start, clean away a little bit of the blood from her, face. As Izuku would say this, "Are you okay?" As she would say this, "Yeah, I'm okay now." Both of them would start to smile at each other, as all the girls, except for, for Izumi, for obvious reasons, they would start to become a lot jealous, including well, Modoma, because after that little fight with him and her, well, she sort of had a crush now on him. And yeah, Izuku's gonna get a harem. Don't even ask. Don't even ask. I won't change it. It's gonna be a fucking harem, and you can't stop me. You can't stop me. Oh god damn it. So anyway, so after that they would start to leave the little facility, as all of them would basically go back to their specific dorms. Ezekiel would go back to his dorm room, as he would basically feel a bit sleepy. As well, Ida would say this. So, Ezekiel, are you okay? As Ezekiel would say this. Yeah, I'm just a bit sleepy. As one of them would say this, specifically, Ida. As Ida would say this. So, Ezekiel, do you want anything? As Izuku would say this. So, is there any leftovers on the... As she would start looking at the fridge, as she would look into it, as she would see a few ingredients, like, for example, the old rice, and also some, vegetables, some chicken stock, and some, pieces of, some bacon in the freezer, and some hot dogs. So, after grabbing these, ingredients, she would say this. Do you want to make some fried rice? As Izuku would say this. Do I ever? Izuku would basically, get out of the bed, as he would basically start helping her, basically, make this, delicious fried rice. So, Izuku would start cutting all of the ingredients, as, wait for a second. As Ida would basically, start, cook some of the, chopped up, ingredients, like, for example, the hot dogs, the bacon, and, the vegetables, as she would grab the old fried rice, as Izuku would help her. So, as Izuku would basically smell the aroma from that fried rice, as he would say this. Smells pretty good. And, hey, Ida, how do you know how to cook? As she would say this. Oh, it's from my late mother. As Izuku would say this. Your late mother? As she would say this. Yeah. My mother died during childbirth. So, I don't really remember much, so... As Izuku would say this. Wait. Let me just rephrase that. Wait for a second. I meant... Well, my mother, she sort of died. She was actually a hero, but she unfortunately died pretty recently. As Izuku would say this. From who? As she would say this. Well, my mother died from a villain. Her name was the Hero Killer. As Izuku would say this. You mean that, that vigilante? As she would say this. Yeah. I still feel angered about that. Especially with my mother's death. As Izuku would look at her with this almost sad look, as she would say this. You don't really mean to, look at me like that. As Izuku would basically, hug her, as she was not expecting this, as Izuku would say this. Ida, I'm your servant. I'm supposed to serve you, and not just be your friend, also your loyal companion. So, don't worry. I'm here. You don't need to cry. As she would start, cry a little bit, as she would say this. Yeah. Mom is probably proud of me. Proud of me for saving you. As Izuku would say this. I guess so. As Izuku would start hugging her even more, as they would basically, finish up the fried rice. So, she would say this. Well, the fried rice is ready, so... As both of them would start eating together. So, they would decide to just, eat in the same plate, because it's much more easier to do the dishes that way, so... They would eat in the same plate, as they're almost kind of like a couple, basically, playing around with their food. And, yeah... So, unbeknownst to them, one of them is basically, one student of Class 1A is basically, watching them. Actually, it's not even one person. It's more like 3 people in this perspective, in this case. So, these people were a jealous Bakugo, which Bakugo was completely jealous of her, aka, Ida, for, spending some time with Izuku for obvious reasons. Then there's, what's her face? Kirishima, because, well, after Kirishima was beaten by Izuku, she sort of had this, nice friendship towards him. But, well, she sort of had a little bit of feeling towards him as well. And finally, we go to, Kaminari. She was pretty much pervy at the start. I mean, she was friends in the anime with, or at least in the actual, original, canon series. Mineta and also Kaminari were, best friends, so, well, in this one, it's basically the same as, just like in canon. So, both, Mineta and Kaminari are completely perverts. Complete perverts. So, for, Kaminari to see Izuku basically, hanging out with, Ida, well, she's sort of jealous. Especially with the whole, Izuku being a muscle-bound god at that point. So, she was a bit jealous, as Bakugo was boiling at this point, saying, so, Izuku is basically now having a bit of fun with that four-eye, as she would start creating a little bit of it, she would start creating little explosions, as, Kaminari would say this, hey, Bakugo, are you a bit jealous of him? Or, I meant, wait for a second, are you a bit, a bit jealous of, Ida? As she would say this, yes, I mean, Izuku is my crush, and, whatever. She would basically start glaring at both, Izuku and Ida having a bit of fun, as one of them would basically say this, specifically Kirishima. Hey, Baka bro, Kiri bro, maybe we should probably leave now. Besides, we're kind of ruining, both their moments right now. And especially with, the whole explanation of why, Ida acts like that. As, Bako would start glaring at her, as she would say this, I'm sorry, but I'm not losing to her. Izuku is going to be mine. And this time, I won't hold back. She would basically start looking at both of them as, a person would basically come up to them basically from the back, as, Bako would be knocked out by a chop to the neck. Not really an actual chop, as in, cutting off her head, as in, basically chopping her neck to basically knock her out. And also Kirishima, and also for, Kaminari. And this person was, well, wait for it, was Jiro, as Jiro would say this. Seriously? So, she would basically drag all three of them back to their rooms, as she would say this. I mean that the Zuka guy is kind of cute, but still. I mean, wait, what would my mother actually think about me actually dating him? As she would start to get a little bit flustered, as she would say this, whatever, I'm gonna go back to bed. So, she would basically leave as we go back to Izuku and also, Ida having their mean time. So, after that, they would basically go onto the bed as Izuku would basically, let, Ida basically sleep on his chest. As she would say this, as usual, Izuku, you're absolutely warm. As Izuku would say this, and you're absolutely adorable as usual. As she would basically start to blush a little bit, as Izuku would basically say this, "Oh, are you a bit shy?" As she would say this, "Yeah, I didn't really know that you, she would basically start to blush even more, as Izuku would say this. Anyway, so, Ida, as Ida would say this, yes, as Izuku would basically go closer to her, as he would say this, good night, as he would basically kiss her on the forehead, as her face would be completely, red as a freaking tomato, as Izuku would basically fall asleep, as Ida, after her blushing, she would basically calm down, as she would basically, basically crawl up to her blanket, as she would basically grab it, covering both of them. And so, they would fall to sleep. So yeah, so this is going to be the end of this episode. And so, I hope you liked the video, comment, and subscribe, and I hope to see you guys next time. Bye-bye!